Welcome to the Cuttercast, presented by Canvas Cutter, where we leave chaos for campfires and trade deadlines for dirt roads. We dive into hunting stories, outdoor adventures, and the gear that lets you live life outside. Kick back and let's get into it. Sweet, thank you. All right, guys, welcome to the Cuttercast. New episode here. We're going to be talking about an article that Kyle wrote, and I'll introduce him in just a minute. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of this episode, I wanted to remind you that there is a giveaway going on in connection with the Cuttercast podcast. So if you want the details of that giveaway, check out the show notes down below the video or connected to this episode if you're listening to it. Pretty big giveaway. There's going to be 6 winners, a grand prize winner who's going to win a loaded Dominator sleep system, a Burro Duffel, and some swag. And then there's 5 other winners that will win a lot of awesome prizes. So super simple to get entered. You don't have to buy anything. You can go to Canvas Cutter and purchase gear for your upcoming hunts and use code CUTTERCAST. It will save you 5% at checkout. And every dollar spent will give you bonus entries into the giveaway. But if you want to learn more about how to get entered so that you can be a winner, check out the notes below, and it will let you know how to do that. But Kyle Paxman, neighbor, friend, avid outdoorsman and hunter, lots of experience. Also lots of experience with writing for various outdoor and hunting magazines. He's also a Canvas Cutter ambassador, and part of his role with Canvas Cutter is helping us create more content in the form of written articles about all things hunting and how to be successful out in the field, really. If you want to read his articles, we already have several up. When you go to canvascutter.com, there's a tab up at the top. You click on that, and it'll bring down a drop-down menu. And you click on Experience, and then in Experience, it's the top one, Johnson Rambles. And within that, there's the Cutter column, which is done by Kyle. And today we're going to talk about his latest article that he wrote, called "You've Drawn a Fancy Tag, Now What?" And a lot of you out there have probably spent many years of your life putting in for a premium tag in a western state. And when you finally pop the tag, it's super exciting, but it can also be really overwhelming, especially if it's a unit that you're not really familiar with. You've put in for years and years because it's a good unit, but maybe you're not really familiar with it. How do we go about it? The first suggestion you make, or the first step, is gathering information.
Right.
But what's our resources? Where do we start? Where do we go?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, hopefully if you've been chasing a particular unit for a long time, you've already done a little bit of homework. And so you kind of know, what to expect to a certain extent. I usually start looking at maps, right away, and access and things like that. I typically make a phone call to the biologist, right away to get an idea of what the current state of the unit is. And I think I mentioned in the article, make sure that you're asking very specific questions.
Yeah, I was gonna with the biologist. I had never called a biologist until about 5-6 years ago. There was a unit I was just really struggling to understand, and I figured, the biologist should know it pretty well. And he was helpful to an extent until he realized that I knew the unit really well. Like, I started naming canyons, and it turned out I named several spots that he actually hunted, which actually surprisingly allowed him to open up and trust me a little bit more. I don't know if trust is the right word.
Well, but he knew you were more serious.
He knew I was more serious, and so the amount of information and detail he gave was extremely helpful.
Yeah, one of my best friends is a biologist in Idaho, and so you would be surprised how many phone calls they get. And if you want to avoid kind of the run-of-the-mill answers,
Yeah.
you need to come with very specific, what about this canyon, or what happens when it snows, or specific questions so that he can give you more specific answers, and then also so he'll understand, he or she, I guess, understand that you're really in it for something more than the average guy that calls them, right? And so that's been very helpful. I think a lot of it as well. I talk about, all the different membership opportunities that are out there these days. I'm a member of Epic, so I guess shameless plug for them. But within those memberships, they have people that have hunted it in the past lists, and those have proved for me extremely valuable.
Interesting.
And I've had numerous examples where you get 20 names on a list, you start emailing or texting them. A lot of them won't respond, but you'll get usually a couple every time that it's like, oh yes, I've been here. You need to go look at this spot, or this is my experience. And so you can kind of start building information based on what they tell you as well, which is
super powerful.
It is
because most of them have likely gone through the process you're going through,
exactly,
and then did the hunt. And so
yeah, and most of them, if they're paying for memberships, they are
pretty
typically
serious.
next level guys, right?
Yeah.
That's not always the case, but I had a scenario 2 years ago. I drew an elk tag in Wyoming, called the list. The second guy on the list is like, I had the tag last year. It was phenomenal. He gave me a name of a landowner that allowed, kind of trespass type fees, and it really made the hunt. I think we could have figured it out on our own, but it would have taken, it was an 11-hour drive.
Yeah.
So you burn all that time getting there. There wasn't a lot of opportunities to really scout. And so he put a pin on the map, and there were several shooter bulls in that canyon where he pinned.
Wow.
And so it was extremely valuable. Yeah. And so just, one guy can really make or break the experience.
So definitely from how you explain it, I think with that first step of e-scouting and like really looking at maps and diving into that before you even call a biologist or use some of those subscription platforms would be extremely valuable, so that when you do talk to them, you actually know the areas that they're talking about and can have more serious conversations as well. Like, you've done your homework, you're serious about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I always take a notebook with me, and so I'm writing down, what people tell me, places that I go that either intrigue me, or circle them on a map, or put pins on Onyx with notes. I'm probably like a lot of guys that, 5 years ago when I was pinning everything in Onyx, now there's just random pins everywhere, and I don't remember why I pinned them.
Yeah.
And so, be specific with that information as well, so that when you get there or you forget, that, it's still relevant. And that's proved really helpful as well. Like, if you get in the hunt and you start struggling a little bit, it's like, oh, let's go back through notes that I've taken or pins that are in there, and maybe somebody else will jump out at you that'll, open the door a little bit.
Do you spend more time with Google Earth or Onyx, do you think?
I think it depends on the unit. I think if there's a lot of private land, I think I spend more time on Onyx, just trying to figure out access and, workarounds and things like that. I love Google Earth probably more. I just feel it's easier to navigate within it.
Yeah.
Onyx is coming a long way with their 3D mode and things like that.
Yeah.
It's still hard for me, especially on my phone, to use two fingers.
The two fingers, yeah.
And so for me, getting on the computer with a mouse and using Google Earth, and using the ground level view where you can put yourself on glassing points and really see what it looks like, I like that better, I think. A lot of it gives you perspective and elevation changes as well, which Onyx is a little bit harder.
Yep.
I've had a few places like, oh, this is no big deal, and then you get there and realize it's 3,000 vertical feet, and,
and it is a big
it's not doable, right?
Yeah.
So I like Google for that reason, depending on what you're trying to do at the time. But.
Right. Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only person that goes to ground view.
Yeah.
I always feel silly doing that, because I'm like, is it really gonna? I feel like it does help. So.
Yeah. No, it gives you perspective on, like, if you're trying to sit on a point, it's like, well, what can I see from that point? And if you stick the little dude there, you can kind of tell what's going on, right?
Yeah, you can. So e-scouting, leading into phone calls with biologists, possibly if you're subscription based, which they'll give you help as well, right?
They will.
Epic,
Yeah.
Epic.
Epic.
But I can see that list of dudes who've had the tag before could be gold if you can get one of them to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, for me, their magazines are great. You've got to understand that they, have like 15,000 members or whatever the number is, and so that information is going to all those guys. But they only give the hunt list of names to those that draw tags, and so it's not like, hey, I'm doing research on unit whatever. They won't send you the list. It's you almost have to prove that you have a license before you get the list, which is that's smart.
Good.
Really.
Yeah, that's really smart. So I get all this information. I've done my e-scouting, called a biologist. One thing you mentioned about within the information gathering that I've never done is actually calling like a game warden that works in the area.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I've never done it. Do you feel like it's helpful? Are they pretty tight-lipped or?
Oh, it depends on the area, and again, I think it depends on
questions.
The questions, yeah, and what you're trying to get out of them, and what you're trying to ask.
What would be some good questions for, like, boots on the ground, a guy that works the area?
Sure. The stuff that I usually like to ask a lot are buck-to-doe ratios or bull-to-cow ratios, especially post-hunt, so you kind of know what you're getting into for the coming year. I always ask when the last time they flew it was. Typically most states these days are doing aerial surveys.
Right.
And so, like, when did you fly it last? You can kind of tell how relative their information is. There's been a few scenarios where, units have been really good, but then they haven't flown it for 3 or 4 years, and things have happened in that time period, and so their information's not as relevant. I always love to ask the question, when you flew it last, did you see anything special?
Right.
And sometimes they'll tell you, yes, I did. They usually won't tell you where. They have clauses within their work agreements that they can't give specifics, right? But
could you drop me a pin?
Yeah, that's always, it's worth a shot. But at least then that, there's a giant in the unit that's worth spending more time in, or, top end is X, and you kind of know what to expect. I always like to ask the question, if you had the tag, how would you hunt it? Mm-hmm. And maybe that opens them up a little bit. That's a really good
question, yeah.
Especially if they're hunters. You do get biologists these days that don't hunt, and so you have to be a little careful with that one, especially in Colorado. But most of them, they talk to hunters every day, and so they're a little used to the routine. Right. It's taking it to the next level and thinking about, well, what am I trying to get out of them? I already know, like, usually, at least in my scenario, the unit I drew, I already know the basics, right?
Yeah.
And so it's trying to ask them questions that are next level, if that makes sense. A lot more specific.
Yeah. That's one thing I'm going to do this year that I've never done. I got lucky, got an Expo tag, early rifle bull tag, but it's on a unit I've never stepped foot in.
Yeah.
And so this information is extremely pertinent to me and super helpful. So I'm definitely going to be applying it, and this is very selfish, but also helpful. There's so many people out there with tags that they've waited a long time for. Okay, so I've done a lot of information gathering. I know that's extremely helpful, but for me, like, being in the unit and being able to connect dots of those areas mentioned is huge. And then scouting, what suggestions do you have for the importance of scouting and how we scout and put that information into use?
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, it really depends on what hunt it is. If it's an archery hunt, obviously spending more time in July is a lot more useful, whereas it's a third season Colorado hunt, that's not going to do you as much good.
Right.
So some of it depends on the tag that you have, but there's nothing that replaces being in the unit. Getting your own eyes on it, what the vegetation's like, what the water's like, if it's drought year, what that's doing to things that year. I have spent time in units that I didn't even have tags on, just trying to get an idea of, like, okay, this hunt that starts a week from now, like it was in Arizona, trying to get a gauge of how many deer are in this area.
Right.
right before the hunt type of thing.
Like before you had a tag, but we're interested in hunting it.
Yeah.
Doing some
Yeah.
scouting in the area.
Yeah, I mean, no secret, the Kaibab, right? So I have a ton of Arizona points. So I'm trying to debate between the Strip and the Kaibab. And, the Kaibab's come on pretty strong. And so I took 2 years in a row down there in November, kind of just wandering around, trying to learn the country, right? And a lot of that just goes into the memory bank for if I do make that decision and draw that tag. It's like, oh, yeah, we were here. We saw a big deer here. We saw them migrating down this canyon. So I guess that question depends a little bit on the hunt type. Elk, I feel like, are, especially for at least in Utah, rut and bow hunts, a little bit harder to scout for because they move a ton.
Yep.
Right.
Like I'm planning on with mine, since it's early rifle, going like the week before and scouting really hard, because for me it doesn't feel, outside of learning the area and seeing the topography and knowing, oh, that's that canyon, that's what that looks like if I go now and find a great bull, well, by the time my hunt comes, he could be 50 miles away, running in a completely
in a different unit.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it gives you trophy potential ideas, right? So you can kind of gauge that. But some of that I think too is it's harder and harder to do these days. But repeat experiences in the same unit, where you just keep gaining knowledge, you learn, and understand. Like some of the units in Utah, I know that if I find a bull here, he's most likely going to rut over there. And you can start, waiting for him to show up, or at least looking for him to show up. The deer hunts are a little bit tougher. I think, hunting them in the summer pattern, the bow hunt, definitely time in July or right up to the hunt is the most crucial. Probably the same with a muzzleloader hunt. There's a lot of times that I try to pack in a day or two early on hunts, just so you can kind of see what happens, where people come, what the animals are doing. I think the days right up to the hunt are almost more crucial than spending a ton of time earlier.
Right.
Because it's more relevant, right?
And those days right before the hunt, like what's your process? Or you've gathered all this information. Are you just going to the place that was mentioned the most? Are you trying to check out each area? Or do you feel like it's best to like really narrow it down and start focusing on?
Oh, I don't know. I think it depends on how much patience you have, right? I mean, if you're not seeing something in certain areas, then I'm like, let's go somewhere else type of thing, right? And it really depends on the hunt, but I think there's different aspects of that. I think I almost said pre-scouting, but scouting beforehand gives you the idea of, hey, I really love it here. I want to spend more time here. If I can't make it back, then I'll put that on the list of, hey, I want to go check this out either during the hunt or right before the hunt. Looking for elk wallows, looking for elk rubs definitely keys you in, typically where they rut year over year.
Right.
Shed hunting for deer and elk definitely clues you into that a little bit of, okay, here's where they summer, here's where they end up. You can start drawing lines and figure out, hopefully some migration corridors. Technology's come a long way with that these days also, right? But I think a lot of it is just trying to, and I think I started the article with this, is mapping out your time. Yep. And for me, it's like if time's really constrained, I would rather put more days during the hunt than burning them in the summer that maybe not as relevant.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice that I've found to be extremely helpful for me as well, just because, believe it or not, running an outdoor company actually steals a lot of your time in the peak time where you would like to be out hunting. So does all your customers. So
life's busy.
Life gets busy. So using your time and resources appropriately is, I think, super important. Now, the last section of your article talked about something I've never done before, and in fact, I was like I don't need to do that. But after reading your article and the section, it makes a lot of sense, and that is the possibility of like seriously thinking about hiring a guide for your hunt. And I've always been like, I feel like I'm competent enough to do it. I don't know if I would want to spend the money to do that. However, when you think about it, my dad, for example,
Yeah.
he started putting in for his mule deer tag when he was 44 years old. He drew it when he was like 60, 67 years old. That's a long time to put in. And he finally drew it. And we chased giants. And he chose to eat tag soup because he was going after a buck. He passed on some really big deer. But if you put in for 25 plus years, spending a few grand to hire somebody who knows the unit and who knows what's there and can help you be in the right spots at the right time could be really priceless. And you had an experience too that you mentioned in the article that
I have the only guided hunt I've ever been on was a turkey hunt. And it was kind of the same thing as like we could call our own turkeys, but it was giving us access to ground. They knew where the birds were roosting. It was in Wyoming, but I mean, really, when you're hiring a guide, I think I'm in the same boat as you. I don't feel like I'm hiring them for the skill set in regards to, shooting, calling, glassing.
Right.
But it's more you're hiring them because they have intimate knowledge of the unit,
right,
which you can't gain overnight.
Right.
Or in a year even, right? And I mean, the example I gave in the article talked about I drew an early rifle up tag in Arizona, so like the cream of the cream. And it was a long time ago, 2004. This year they got sued, actually. And so they had to go 50-50 between residents and non-residents, and so I drew a tag.
You drew a tag.
But yeah, I was talking to a bunch of outfitters because it was a 13-hour drive to get there. I did make 3 scouting trips down there, and kind of the same thing. I started networking a little bit. One of my taxidermist friends says, "Hey, call this guy," and he was super cool. Ended up helping me on the unit. But the very first thing he said to me is, "You'll understand when you get down here how hard it is to kill trophy animals in somebody else's pond."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was very, very true. But I had several guys reach out. They're kind of a lot of the big name guys, and I don't know, decided not to do it. And one of them, he even sent me a letter that was like personal, and then he called me. I think he's actually passed on now, but he used to guide a lot of the governor hunters. He lived in the unit, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm looking at bulls out my window. One of them's 420 and 8x9, and he's like, I'm fairly confident if you come down and book me that we can kill that bull." And I talked to him a lot, and he was a horse trainer, I believe, and ended up not booking with him. My whole thought was like, well, he put a pin on the map, like where it is. How hard can it be to go find this bull and kill it? Thick lodgepole. You're chasing bugles.
Really
it was
hard.
really hard. I was there. We came down a week early trying to kind of learn it and find him.
Yeah.
I think I heard him a couple times, but never could see him. And, the hunt, I did kill a bull on the last day that was 340s, a solid bull. But
that's awesome.
Passed a couple bulls that were probably 360, maybe one that was 370, trying to chase this giant. But the hunt ended, and I talked to him, and he's like, yeah, he's in there. How we hunt him is you get on horseback, and you just start chasing bugles down faster. And I don't know. That's one that I always regret a little bit.
Yeah.
It was an amazing experience with my brothers, but I think it's trying to quantify what are you trying to get out of these tags.
Yep.
Right? If you're a type of guy that really needs the biggest and the best in the unit, then maybe hiring a guide is
the way to
the
go.
best opportunity at that. I think about Utah, and there's a lot of outfitters here in Utah. Most of them are pretty good, and you're paying them for their knowledge of the units and bulls that are alive.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, that when you draw a tag, unless you really have a bunch of annual years consecutive in there, you don't have history with creatures that are alive. These guys do.
Right.
They already have a hit list before the season starts.
Yep.
They know how they got away last year, and so that's what you pay for.
Pretty valuable.
It is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's something I've never considered until your article, but found it incredibly insightful. Thank you for writing it.
Oh, you bet.
And I hope you guys go to canvascutter.com. Again, it's under experience and then Johnson Rambles, and you'll see it, the cutter column. But Kyle's full of knowledge, and we just scratched the surface of the article. So if you want to learn more, go read it. And we're going to try to come out with an article about once a month. We'll see how the pacing goes, but also do these podcasts to go over them about that same pace, because I think it's super helpful for guys that like to get out and chase deer and elk. And I hope this was helpful. Make sure, please, to leave us a review if you like it. Share the podcast with a friend, and always keep on keeping on.
Awesome.